ordinance provisions that which regulate firearms. Attached, please find the above referenced ordinance which repeals existing borough ordinances provisions regulating firearms. Public Safety Committee is recommending that council authorize the advertising of this ordinance. If council wishes to follow the recommendation, you can do so by motion.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Do we have any comments from council?
I'd like to applaud our mayor for his statement preceding these proceedings.
Okay, thanks, Burke. Any public comment?
I
yes.
actually have some.
Oh, yes, Ms. West.
I will be voting for the repeal of all our gun laws today, but I would like to do that by clarifying the position that I have. I'm voting for the repeal of our laws because Act 192 has made it necessary for both our solicitor and Delaware Valley Insurance Trust to advise us that it is in the financial interest of our borough to repeal our gun laws, since we will be liable for all court costs and damages in the case of a gun rights loss. This does not have to do with safety. Our laws seem rather benign to me for a densely populated borough of 2.3 square miles with about 8,300 residents. It's basically don't shoot in the borough, don't carry guns in our parks, and don't shoot in a parking lot. There's nothing about possession, there's nothing about reporting stolen guns. Those are our laws. But we were informed last Wednesday by some gun rights groups who attended our public safety meeting that we are not in compliance with the law, which suggested to me that we are open to a lawsuit. And although our solicitor and state law suggest we would prevail in a challenge, the financial cost could be prohibitive. Thankfully, our chief has assured us that state law will cover reckless use of guns in our borough, which gives me comfort for passing the repeal. But it does not give me comfort to know that our legislators would pass a law shifting the full responsibility of court costs and damages to municipalities. It actually defies my logic. Would they grant the same law to Amnesty International if they perceived we were violating human rights, or the ACLU if they believed, and I emphasize believe, doesn't have to be actual, that we were violating civil rights? I doubt it, but they did in the case of guns. On October 16th and October 20th, House Bill 80 passed with almost a 70% majority in both the Senate and the House. And on November 6th, our governor passed Act No. 192 in law for all municipalities in Pennsylvania to go into effect in early January. I am dumbfounded, stunned, and angry. And actually at work today, I was reading some materials that basically indicates that I've been going through stages of grief. So tonight, I am in the stage of acceptance, and I will live up to the physical responsibilities to the borough as a council person and repeal our laws specific to gun usage in the borough.
Thank you, Ms. West. Any other comments from council? Yes, Ms. Margolis.
Mr. President, I have a comment. Clearly, the elected officials who voted for this bill have priorities other than the safety of our residents and visitors. The only reason I will be voting to repeal ordinances that protect the safety of the citizens of Doylestown is because it would be irresponsible for this council to expose our taxpayers to a situation where their hard-earned money could be stolen from them by zealots who could care less about their best interests.
Thank you, Ms. Margolis. Any further comments from council?
I have one comment.
Yes, Ms. Badian.
Since we cannot have an ordinance that bans guns in children's playgrounds, I urge council to write a letter to our representatives in the state legislature, urging them to pass something on a statewide level.
Thank you, Ms. Badian. I would also like to point out that Governor Corbett, when he did sign the bill on December 6th, he had to sign it again. That was not the correct bill. It was one of these fun legislative flubs, so in case you're winning a bar at a major. But perhaps also to consider one of the protections that the state legislature affords themselves with regards to carrying firearms within their own legislative chambers, and they do not afford those
Yes,
that consideration they do not afford that consideration to municipalities. So perhaps that they might consider that as well. So maybe Community Governmental Affairs, if you can consider, Donnie and your committee, consider a resolution for a council to with regards to these areas which were identified by residents as weaknesses in the legislation.
Mr. Anson?
Yes, Ms. Doyle.
I would like to also, just support the comments of my colleagues, but also, would it be prudent for someone to read or explain what we are doing here? This is a revised ordinance from what was presented at the Public Safety Committee meeting, although we did, I think, Mr. Yeager very clearly explained what he was recommending. But I think it would be good for someone to just give an outline of what we are doing here.
First, listen, we had a very well-attended public meeting, and it is available for anyone who would like a copy of it. But Jordan, if you want to provide any further background on the
Just the only, I think the discussion so far tonight has highlighted really what the driving issues have been. Perhaps what has been left out is a description of the ordinance sections that are being, that are the subject of the ordinance. The only change from the draft of the ordinance that was before the committee was in the whereas clauses, but not in the substance of what was enacted, what would be enacted. And so there are 3 sections of the Borough Code that are at issue. The first is Chapter 6, Part 2, Section 201 of the Borough's Code of Ordinances, which states, except in necessary defense of person and property, and except as provided in Section 3 of this ordinance, it shall be unlawful for any person to use, fire, or discharge any gun or other firearm within the Borough of Doylestown. So the proposed ordinance before council would repeal that section in its entirety, just so that folks understand what the exceptions beyond self-defense are, beyond defense of person and property, are for licensed hunting, for members of organizations engaged in target shooting, and for law enforcement. The other section is Chapter 6, Part 3, Section 304, which deals with public parking lots, and in particular, paragraph 9. So these are various prohibitions about what you can and what you can't do in public parking lots, such as engaging in sporting activities and maintaining a fire, defacing property, those types of things. Paragraph 9 of that says that you're prohibited to carry or discharge any firearms, slingshots, firecrackers, fireworks, or other devices upon any public parking lot which have such properties as to cause annoyance or injury to any person lawfully using such public parking lot or injury to the property of such persons. So the proposed ordinance simply strikes the word firearm from that paragraph, so that it would be prohibited to slingshots, firecrackers, fireworks, but not prohibited under borough ordinance to carry or discharge a firearm. It would be prohibited under state law for that discharge. And then the final is Chapter 16, Part 2, Section 206, which deals with conduct in parks and recreation areas. Paragraph 3 relates to prohibitions on hunting and firearms. So it provides that it's no person in a park shall hunt, trap, or pursue wildlife at any time. No person shall use, carry, or possess firearms of any descriptions, or air rifles, spring guns, bow and arrows, slings, or other forms of weapons potentially inimical to wildlife and dangerous to human safety, or any instrument that can be loaded with and fire blank cartridges of any kind of trapping device. Shooting into park areas from beyond park boundaries is forbidden. So the proposed ordinance simply strikes the word firearm from the title of that paragraph and strikes the phrase firearms of any description or from the paragraph. So it would take out the prohibitions on using, carrying, or possessing firearms in parks. That's it.
Thank you, Jordan. Any further comments from council?
I just, Mr. President, I just wanted to point something out. I was a little disappointed in press coverage of this. At our committee meeting, I read a statement I don't find 201 to be unconstitutional at all. And it's sort of like which of these things is not like the other. That section does not impact the right to carry in Pennsylvania, in my opinion. I believe the solicitor agrees with that opinion.
I believe that, as I stated at the Public
Right.
Safety Committee, I believe that all of these provisions are
I think they're on shakier
defensible.
ground than that one,
And-
though.
And in particular, state law.
And
state
so,
law-
I went to that committee meeting with the full intention of not voting to repeal that particular section. I was reassured by the chief that we have better tools at our disposal in the form of state laws, and that they carry higher penalties in most cases. And so if somebody illegally fired a weapon in Doylestown Borough, they would be charged under those particular provisions of the state code. That was the only reason I withdrew my objection to that. As to the other two, I mean, I think there's court precedent that at stake here as far as those. So I just want to make that clear. That really wasn't made clear. There's a very clear distinction in my mind between the right to carry a firearm and illegally discharge a firearm. And that particular ordinance deals with that.
Well, Mr.
So that's-
Flint, one of the areas that obviously with all of these, we don't feel that any of these are unconstitutional. That we got a pretty good shot at, no pun intended, of surviving a challenge. The problem is the cost and the risk is so great. And these items that Mr. Yeager cited right off as per discussion of the Public Safety Committee have already been identified in threatening letters and notice provided to the borough and by the groups
I
that are
read
involved.
that. I read that.
Yeah.
I read that letter.
Yeah.
But
So that's-
if I actually felt like I was compromising public safety, I wouldn't vote for it. 1,000 lawyers could threaten 1 million lawsuits, and it wouldn't.
The greatest vote
do
for
that.
safety we're taking this evening, though, and the reality is these repeals have nothing to do with safety. It does put us in a position where someone on a playground, you really can't take action. Obviously, call the police and fire and police department if you need to deal with that. But what this is about safety from these lawsuits. End of the day, this is not about gun safety. This is about safety lawsuits.
You can say that. I've outlined my position slightly different.
I
So,
appreciate
yeah,
that, Mr. Flynn. All right, do we have any?
I just wanted
yes.
to clarify too, the ordinances, what I left out was that the ordinances that we're dealing with date from 1959, 1970.
Well, in 1959, when that ordinance was passed.
If I may just finish. 1959, which was revised in 1984.
Right.
1971, and 2002. That's all.
Yes.
Right, okay. And in 1959, when that ordinance was enacted, I'm sure there were no state laws that covered that ground, so.
I believe they all predate the Uniform Fire
Yes,
Control
they
Act.
do. All right, with that, do we have any public comment? With no further comment, I'd like to call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up, Mr. Bryan.